traveling to new places, and indulging in a lifelong coffee habit. I understand that habit. Caffeine keeps the mind on the move. So let's move on to Nicholas's story, Past the Horizon Line.
Okay, so when you look in the eyes of someone with dementia, what do you see? And it's a complicated question because it's not, they can't communicate the same way as someone without dementia can. So is the person still in there? Are they still able to think the same way they did before? And you know, my feeling on this is an absolute yes. I say that after working in the Alzheimer's unit at the nursing home for years. And I mean, there's so many stories I could say from that. So many different amazing people I took care of and worked with that I could talk about for hours. But I knew when I was going to do this story tonight, there was one story in particular and one person that I just had to talk about. And the first time I met this particular resident of the nursing home, or saw her anyway, I just saw this very tiny, shaky old woman, almost 100 years old, just pushing herself down the hallway of the nursing home in the wheelchair, just glaring forward with these intense eyes. And so I was looking at her, and this person next to me just pointed her out and said, "Don't come close, don't talk to her, trust me, that woman is pure evil." So I'm looking at him like, this seems ridiculous to me. I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Listen, she is mean, she's bitter, she'll rip your head off. She like sends nurses out of the room crying, just trust me, don't talk to her." And so I'm like, okay, I gotta meet this person. So I'm looking into her face, and she had this amazing face, because as she's just stubbornly fighting against like the laws of nature with these shaky hands pushing the wheelchair forward, she had this stubborn, just defiant expression with this kind of fierce dignity on it. And I saw just looking at her very clearly that this is a person who probably fought for every achievement she ever had in life. And now she's in this nursing home with dementia, and she's up against the one battle she can't beat, which is a cognitive illness. So I figured, okay, I gotta get to know this person. And that's it. So I went and I approached her and I started talking to her. And day after day, I would give her wheelchair rides around the facility. I would bring her tea, I would help her eat, I would talk to her, and that sort of thing. And sure enough, she was, in fact, very mean, bitter, and sarcastic. For the first time I actually had a conversation with her, I came up and asked if she'd like a ride on the wheelchair, because she has these shaky, she was struggling with it. And so she just snapped at me like, "Scram, get out of here. Let someone who knows what they're doing take care of this." So I'm like, okay. And then there was the whole process of helping her get into bed, because she would transfer from the wheelchair to bed with a Hoyer, which is a mechanical device that'll lift the person up and put them there. And the process always undid all the blankets and sheets and pillows and stuff. So what would happen is you'd have to spend a half hour pulling the sheet, adjusting the blanket, fixing the pillows, and you'd say, "Is that okay?" And she's like, "Nope, not good." Fix the pillows again, do that. So you're like, "How's that? Is it comfortable?" "Not good." Do it again, not good, not good. It was always just not good, no matter what. And so, it was this way day after day. But I kept talking to her because she was a really fascinating, incredibly intelligent, insulted me every time I talked to her, And so one time I just remember coming in though, and I just started my shift, and one of the things I did always was stop and see all the different residents and talk to them for a minute. And as I came up to her, she was waiting in the front lobby and just suddenly grabbed my hand and was just like, "Oh boy, you caught me red-handed. Yes, sirree, you got me." I was in disbelief because she started laughing. And I had never heard her laugh before the entire time I had worked with her, months and months. And so she then told me this elaborate story about how supposedly her friends drove her up to northern Maine, and somehow it forgot her, but she didn't mind because she had jumped out of her wheelchair and run all the way down to New Hampshire, by sheer force of will, which of course didn't happen. I mean, there's no way it was physically capable, but to her it did, and to her it was a massive victory and achievement, and she wanted to share that with me, which was, for her that was huge, to want to share that with someone else. And I remember this other time, maybe a month or two after that, where I would give her rides around the facility on the wheelchair, and we'd stop and talk for a little bit, usually not saying too much. But as we were sitting there, she just kind of looked at me, and she was mostly blind, but she was looking at me and said, "Thank you for being there for me." And I was in disbelief again. But then she's like, it's good to have a friend.
Oh.
So as so I mean, I kept taking care of her and this, and like eventually, as the years went by, the decline set in, because obviously with dementia, that's what happens. You decline, you lose capabilities, you lose that sort of thing. And so she lost the ability to communicate, which meant there weren't many bitter, sarcastic comments coming out anymore because you just couldn't talk. She got locked up inside herself, unable to move for the most part, constantly in pain, couldn't talk, any of this stuff. But looking into her eyes, I saw that the same person was still in there. And I remember the last time I saw her, which I didn't know was going to be the last time, I remember helping her get into bed again with the Hoyer and adjusting blankets and sheets. And at this point, because she couldn't talk, she couldn't do much in the way of correcting it or saying it wasn't good or any of that. But I did it anyway because I remembered what she liked. So I'm adjusting, pulling the sheets, putting the pillows there. And I tried every time. I'm just like, so is that comfortable? Is it good? And she said, pretty good. And that was the first time she'd spoken in months. Ended up that it was the last time I ever heard her speak, because after that I wasn't there on the shift where she died. It happened some weeks after that. I just wasn't there that day. It wasn't my shift. But what I remember, I just felt intensely guilty about this, because I felt like I should have been there. I should have been able to help somehow. But thinking about it more, I reconciled with this by realizing that for all intents and purposes, I was there, because in the last few years of her life, in that kind of final frontier that was there, I always thought of her as a friend. I never thought of her as someone I was just taking care of. It was a genuine friend, a true friendship. And I never looked into her eyes and saw her as anything less than that. And knowing that I always saw her for the intelligent, witty, sarcastic, stubborn, and strong person she was, I hope that maybe, just maybe, I was able to be there for her and maybe make those last few years just a little bit less lonely. And I know that no matter what, I'll always remember her. Thank you.